The idea of journalistic objectivity.
Press bias and objectivity.
Journalists and objectivity.
Objectivity in journalism.
Objectivity.
Straight up the middle objective journalists.
The idea of objectivity.
Instance of 100% objectivity.
About objectivity.
Ideal of objectivity.
To me, it's removing the bias, which has become increasingly more difficult as we see. Everybody has an opinion on a particular story, but the key is for you as a reporter to always put yourself in the position of the other side, whether that you think they're guilty or not, and give them the fair chance at their say.
Starting off, when I think of journalistic objectivity, I can't help but think about how everybody is always saying like how important it is for journalists to be unbiased and objective when it comes to what they're writing, and I think generally to me it's not possible to be completely objective, to be completely unbiased, and I actually think that our biases and our unique points of view actually bring and give value to the stories that we tell.
I would say journalism objectivity is trying to say as objective as possible, as neutral as possible, and especially now in a time where everything is polarized, it's kind of delivering the news in a manner that isn't trying to convince or persuade your reader.
I really do respect and admire neutrality in journalism and objectivity, but I much more admire fairness. Okay, so when I feel like I'm covering, say, a scandal or corruption in government, and I feel like I have my hard facts behind me to support this idea of corruption in government, I feel like I can attack really hard, right? Especially if I have facts on my side, right? If I'm not sure, if it's not clear, if there's question, then I really try and be tentative and be more suggestive, okay? There are journalists who really like to take the whisper of corruption and turn it into a big deal, okay? And that I really try and tell my students that that's kind of unfair, right? You really want to have the facts on your side. Now, there is a lot of advocacy journalism going on today, and there are some people who feel really tentative about that, like that's maybe not the best way to go. But I think there's always a place for advocacy journalism, and there's a place for striving for as much neutrality and objectivity as you can. I think both modes are viable. I don't think one is better than the other. I just think there's different situations that call for different approaches, all right? So I think you hear from some people, you hear a really hard line. We have to be as objective as possible. And first of all, I think objectivity is a myth and an ideal and impossible to hit because we're human beings, right? And all my personal bias are going to flood into whatever I write, and I'm going to work very hard to comb and scrub that bias out. But I'm a human being, right? I can't be flawless. And I also think that we are living in really, I'll use this word, I don't think it's an inflammatory word, I think we live in perilous times, and that there is the role for advocacy journalism to be promoting values and idealism that to some people might react as, oh, well, that's got too strong a point of view, that's very opinionated. And my feeling is sometimes we need that. So I am reluctant to toe a party line on this issue. I think reality is more complicated than simply saying, let's just be as objective as possible.
I think journalism objectivity is when journalists practice removing their bias from whatever they're reporting on. So it's basically being objective, and I think the phrase journalism objectivity is different than regular objectivity because they're not doing it because they're told to, they're doing it because their audience expects them to do that, and that's sort of like the ethical code of the whole practice.
Well, I think journalistic objectivity in itself is subjective because the only thing that's ever objective is just universal facts. So to me, journalistic objectivity is just reporting truthfully. I don't think that there's any way to be truly objective in your writing because everyone has inherent bias that cause a slant in your articles. So I guess there's no answer.
Journalistic objectivity is striving to get all sides of an issue, not just one voice. It's seeking to not be partisan, which a lot of our news reporting is today, in my view, unfortunately. In golf terms, which I relate to, it's playing the ball as it lies, playing it down the middle, not taking sides, trying to vet yourself of all subjective opinions you have, and just listen to people from all sides, get the other side or sides, and give the readers a full report so they can make the decision where the truth lies.
Journalist objectivity is an interesting concept. I'm currently in an ethics of journalism class, and it's hard even for us to define it as a class. You know, we constantly go through scenarios, and journalism constantly changes, so as does the definition of journalism objectivity. And for me personally, because I think it changes for every single journalist, I believe that it's not possible to fully remove yourself from what you're reporting. However, you try to report it as the facts, as unbiased as possible, even though it's most important to acknowledge that you will most likely end up with some form of bias. However, that can actually be really good because your readers can see you more as a person. And I think that's the beauty about reporting with technology, because now people are able to connect more. And I think it opens up so many new avenues for defining what journalism objectivity is.